Shut it down. Leaders of both parties continue to point fingers as the government shutdown enters day 2.
They said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition.
I've got Senator Chuck Schumer's response to the vice president. Plus, outrage in Virginia. Police there refuse to arrest a sex offender who claims to be a trans woman with a mile-long rap sheet and plenty of very disturbing evidence against him. And New Jersey drama, why everyone should be paying attention to the Garden State's governor's race. I'll tell you what it says about the direction the country may be headed in. Those stories and more today, Thursday, October 2nd. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. It's day 2 of the government shutdown we all saw coming, with no immediate end in sight. So again, we must ask, what does that all mean? Well, for starters, the director of the Office of Management and Budget says that the layoffs President Trump promised at federal agencies will begin by Friday. The Congressional Budget Office estimates up to 750,000 federal employees could be furloughed or fired during the shutdown. And those layoffs will come from all corners of the government, with a big exception. They apparently won't be coming from the staffers at our national parks. The Department of Interior says those will stay open during the shutdown. It also means that politicians on both sides of the aisle are predictably blasting each other and trying to score political points. Here's more of what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say.
The reason why the American people's government is shut down is because Chuck Schumer is listening to the far-left radicals in his own party because he's terrified of a primary challenge.
Vance also claimed that a key sticking point between the two sides is the Democrats' desire to provide health care to illegal immigrants. Here's Senator Chuck Schumer reacting to that claim on Morning Joe.
It's a total, absolute effing lie. And why are they doing it? You talked about clicks and emotion. That's some of the reason. But I'll tell you the real reason. They're afraid of the truth. They know that what they've done to healthcare has decimated healthcare for so much of America.
It's like that meme of the Spider-Mans pointing at one another, only with a congressional twist and the unfortunate actual side effect of people losing jobs and services. Peace in Gaza is looking less likely now that Hamas has indicated it may reject President Trump's 20-point plan to end the conflict with Israel. The reason? The terror group says it only, quote, serves Israel's interests. One Hamas senior leader told the BBC that it takes issue with the specific demand to disarm and destroy its weapons, as well as the deployment of an international stabilization force in Gaza. It's not all bad news, though. Despite those remarks, Arab mediators told the Wall Street Journal that they're still optimistic that Hamas is open to accepting the conditions, but asked for more time to consider it fully. But time is a factor here. Remember, President Trump gave Hamas 3 or 4 days for a deadline. Now, those mediators, the ones I mentioned there from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, have all reportedly told Hamas to accept the latest plan. But they say Hamas argues that the plan has loopholes that would allow Israel to resume the war. Virginia's Attorney General is blasting Fairfax County officials for refusing to arrest a sex offender despite evidence that he was, quote, hunting little girls. Richard Cox allegedly exposed himself to young girls and adult women inside several ladies' locker rooms. Now, he was finally arrested, but in neighboring Arlington County, where cops there searched his phone and say that they discovered a stash of child pornography, as well as a schedule for girls' swim classes at local rec centers. Now, Cox's sex crime rap sheet stretches more than 30 years. He is at the most serious level of the sex offender registry. Now, when he appeared in court last week, he insisted that while he was born male, he is now female. But the judge refused to refer to him as a woman, citing dozens of horrified witnesses who reported that he still is very much anatomically male after seeing him allegedly strip naked and commit these lewd acts in public locker rooms. Now, exposing your private parts to children is illegal no matter what, and that seems to be the real sticking point here. Fairfax County is still refusing to charge him because they say there simply isn't enough evidence in this particular case. In a statement, the Fairfax County Police Department says they, quote, conducted a full criminal investigation into Richard Cox's actions, and there is no probable cause to support charges in Fairfax County at this time. But the state AG seems to be scratching his head, wondering how that can be, given, as he says, Cox, quote, sought children out in a very deliberate, systemic manner for sexual gratification. The AG is now pressing for new legislation to allow him to prosecute sex crimes that local prosecutors won't. Political parties love a good poll. Data is their jam. What does the American public think of one party or candidate or issue? But a lot of times, they're about as useful as the paper they're printed on. The real report card comes in the form of elections. Problem is, politicians want to predict elections, and that is why they poll. It's a whole chicken-egg thing. And it's particularly difficult to tell how you're doing in off years, the ones between a presidential election and the midterms. But never fear. Our most reliably awesome state is here. The one who gave us Bruce Springsteen, yours truly, and all the data we need right now, New Jersey. This off year for most states is important for the Garden State because it's the year they elect their governor. Here in 2025, it's a tight race between Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. Sherrill had a double-digit lead around Labor Day, but thanks to a perfectly timed scandal involving her time at the U.S. Naval Academy, the two candidates are neck and neck right now. So why does this one race matter so much for the whole country? Why should you, probably not a Garden State resident, care? Our political reporter Ryan King is here with the answers. Ryan, let's start there. What does this Jersey race tell us during these otherwise slow election years? I mean, why should someone in Missouri or Montana even care?
Well, it's a key test of the national mood. So these off-year election races that we see in New Jersey, in New York City, and in Virginia are good bellwethers that can sometimes foreshadow what's going to come in the midterm elections. Back in 2021, we saw Glenn Youngkin have kind of a breakout moment in Virginia where he managed to flip the governor's office red. And then in New Jersey, Jack Ciattarelli had performed much better than he was expected to. He came within 3 points of outgoing governor now, Governor Murphy. And that kind of came in advance of Republicans having a mini red wave in the 2022 midterm election. So it could be a test of, where the nation's mood is at in between presidential election cycles and midterms.
Now, New Jersey has been reliably blue in the last 9 presidential elections, and they haven't had a Republican governor since 2018. So what does this close race say about both New Jersey politics, but also those other reliably blue states too, New York, California?
Yeah, and this is something that we saw a little bit of in the presidential election last November, where President Trump overperformed expectations a bit in some of these blue states, including California, New York, and New Jersey. He was about 6 points away from former Vice President Kamala Harris. And there has been a little bit of a trend in some of these states, including New York and New Jersey, where Republicans have been performing a little bit better than you would traditionally expect. And we have seen through some of the voter registration numbers in some of the blue states where Republicans are actually performing better than you would think. So this is just another test of that.
You mentioned New Jersey not being the only bellwether state, and I heard you say Virginia as well. So why this year right now should we be keeping an eye on Virginia? What's going on down there in the Old Dominion?
Yeah, Virginia is really interesting. That's, of course, right outside D.C. So we're seeing a lot of action there right now where, the government shutdown will be impacting the race. And, there are a lot of federal workers there. So the DOGE cuts will impact things. But, once upon a time, it had been considered more of a swing state several decades ago where it could go either way. Now, lately, it had been blue, but we had seen Governor Youngkin win in 2021, which Republicans were raving about back then. He's term limited, of course, now. I would say with the Virginia race, the mood among Republican operatives that I've talked to is quite a bit more bleak than it was in 2021. People were kind of raving about the race back then. Now it's like if you talk to some of the Republican operatives, they'll quietly say that they don't really expect this one to go their way. And if you look at the polling aggregates, the New Jersey race is looking quite a bit tighter than the Virginia race right now. And Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears has kind of tried to mount a little bit of a culture warrior type campaign and try to go after Abigail Spanberger and try to paint her as woke. And it doesn't seem to be sticking as well, at least not according to the polls, but we'll see if the government shutdown affects things there. That is definitely a key race to watch. And one thing that's also kind of interesting is Spanberger, who had retired from Congress, was previously roommates with Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat nominee running in New Jersey. They previously roomed together in DC, and now they're both running for governor in these off-year election races. So it'll be kind of interesting, but the dynamics of the two races seem a bit different. It will potentially be a test of the national mood, and it does appear that national politics is really kind of dominant in these two races.
We always want to try to predict what will happen on election day, just to predict what's going to go on, predict the results, but it's all going to come down to what people do in that voting booth, and we will get that answer after the election. Ryan King, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now, a story of unexpected compassion coming out of the fatal shooting and fire at that Mormon church in Michigan this week. A devout Mormon who isn't in any way connected to the church, the shooter, or any of the victims started a fundraising campaign. The campaign is aimed at helping the family of the shooter who was killed in a shootout with police. I know that hearing that might give you a moment of pause. It's the shooter's family, not a victim's family, but here's how David Butler, the man who started the campaign, explains it. Butler says he's raising money for Thomas Sanford's wife and son because, quote, they will face financial hardship and psychological trauma as a result of this week's horrifying events. The campaign on the Christian crowdfunding site Give, Send, Go had raised over $200,000 as of Wednesday night, and many of the donations came from people who identified themselves as members of the Mormon faith in the comments. And finally, some sad news to end on today. Jane Goodall, the iconic anthropologist and conservationist, has died. She was 91 years old. The British scientist was best known for her lifelong study of chimpanzees and was in California for a speaking engagement when she passed of natural causes. Yes, she was still working into her 90s. The Jane Goodall Institute, which she founded, posted of their namesake, quote, Dr. Goodall's discoveries as an ethologist revolutionized science, and she was a tireless advocate for the protection and restoration of our natural world. Now, she began her career in Tanzania when she was just 26 years old, and over time proved just how similar chimps are to humans, including their creation and use of tools, their gestures like kissing and holding hands, their potential for violence, and even in their own way, waging wars. Among her many accolades, Goodall was named a UN Messenger of Peace in 2004 and was also made a Dame of the British Empire. That's the female equivalent of being knighted. What a life. What an icon. We should all be so lucky to live to 91. Well, my friends, we have almost made it to the end of the week. I would love it if you followed the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. You don't want to miss a single episode. And then hit that like button while you're at it because, well, you like me and I like you. See you tomorrow.